Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the $100,000 N4C Main Event. 100,000 on the line from a broadcast in Berlin. I am an offsite commentator, which means that I won't be in Berlin. I am not in Berlin casting this one, but we are receiving a clean feed, which means that everything that you see on the screen, everything that you hear is coming from the main broadcast. The only difference is that it is my voice covering it. As you see, there's a lot of things to talk about here on the screen, new overlays and whatnot. This is my first time casting with this clean feed as well, which means that if the game sound is a little off, I apologize for that. We didn't really have a lot of time to test it. But here we go. Spawning in on the northern side of the map is going to be Leenock playing as the Mongols in red. And down south, we do have the blue civilization, the French for Mista. This is part of the Swiss stage of the N4C Main Event, which means that the loser of this best of 5 won't be eliminated from the tournament, but instead falls to a lower portion of the bracket. And whoever wins is going to move upwards in the bracket. And at some point during this week, because the event is actually longer than a week, you are going to have the players at the lower parts of the bracket eliminated. Now, Mista is opening with 2 scouts. You can see that on the minimap. I actually don't have tools to highlight stuff on the minimap, so I will probably have to find some tools for that as we go deeper into this week. As I said, we were given very limited time to test the clean feed over here. In fact, this is the first time I'm able to even cast a game with it because we didn't really have a rehearsal or anything like that for the offsite commentators. But anyways, as you see on the minimap, there is a blue dot to the far left of the map near that sacred site, and there is a blue dot moving on the right side as well. So Mista is opening with 2 scouts, which is a slight deviation from what he usually does with the French. He usually plays 1 scout, whereas for Leenock, I do see 1 con that's already out there harassing the gold miners, and I don't see a second scout, although it might just be hiding on the minimap as well. For whatever reason, we don't have scores on the right side, which actually hurts me, because usually the way I check which player is which, based on the color, is on the score on the right side. Anyways, you got the con harassing the villagers out here. One thing I haven't said yet is that because this is a clean feed provided, and I'm not in the game myself spectating this, it basically means that I'm not the spectator. So they have a designated on-site spectator that's spectating the game, which means that I have no control over the camera. All I can do is just deliver my speech over this one, as you got a Ford villager coming in here for Leenock. On the top right and top left of the screen, you can see the incomes per minute as well as the current resource banks of the players. And it seems like you can also see the villager numbers and the military numbers. The dude with the spear is the military numbers, of course. Villager numbers is the dude next to the houses. And the dude with the Z's on top is obviously the idle villager. For the next cast, I'll probably get some sort of highlighter because, well, as I said, we didn't really have a lot of time to test this one. Here comes a tower from Leenock. That's a beautiful tower because that is going to deny both the gold mine and the lumber camp, but this will be spotted quite easily here by Mista. Now the question is, can you actually stop this tower? Because you have spearmen coming in, and there is only 1 scout, and without animation cancel, that scout won't be able to kill the villager. And you're striking at the heart of the French economy in feudal age. You're taking away that gold income. If you look at the alternative gold mines on the minimap, there are 2 gold mines to the far left of Mista's base, but those are pretty difficult to access and they're pretty far out, so losing this gold mine is a disaster. Now, Mista is one of those players that isn't shying away from playing with horsemen either, but at this point, whatever he does with that school of cavalry will be sort of countered by the spearmen. And of course, the Khan is also out there harassing. Look at that, Leenock yoinking 1 sheep from the back of that scout from Mista. Mista is almost up to feudal, whereas for Leenock, he's not going up yet. This is pretty traditional with the Mongols. If you put up a lot of Dark Age aggression, you will sort of forfeit a decent feudal age timing. He hasn't added a pasture either, so he's going to have to address that food situation soon, but he's going to burn down that mining camp, and that gives him 25 food and 25 gold. And that's immensely valuable on the gold count, because if you look at the top right, that's going to help a lot getting to feudal age. Second tower will probably be placed on the wood line once again. This might not get spotted by Mista. Mista is dropping the mill on the berries for the time being, and there's 2 scouts moving in here to try and intercept that villager. Spearman, little mispositioned, but this will still allow Mista to at least get some breathing room. Mista will need a counter tower for this one, though. He needs to place his own tower because he won't be able to stop this tower with just the horsemen, or excuse me, the scouts. Alternative solution would be to pull the villagers. That's a little risky, but you could consider pulling the veils out here. Now, Mista is adding a lot of scouts and he's making a mill, which makes me feel like he wants to go for professional scouts, but he doesn't have the gold for it right now, so I wonder if the scouts are there to just try and burn down the tower. There is an archer range out there. The spectator wasn't really showing that for us until now. And that archer could be able to pick off the villager. Looks like the archer is still being microed back and forth. One more hit, two more hits actually, that you need to take down the villager. And the villager does go down. Beautiful micro over there by Mista. He picked off the villager. He also picked off two spearmen. And the tower wasn't completed. We didn't see that archer range going up, and I think that Leenock had no idea about it either. That was a very fast archer range from Mista, realizing that he needs something against those spears, and now he is ready to go. If he can get his gold mine back, he could still go professional scouts, but I think that it's actually just going to be the scouts army, really. This scout group is just going to be there to, first of all, provide some vision, and second, it does deliver some combat value, especially when it comes to absorbing damage. So you have to consider that. It's great at absorbing potential cavalry charges from enemy horsemen. It's pretty decent to soak up one or two spearman hits, one or two archer shots, and that could be a reasonable way to play this one for Mista. Deerstone's completed for Leenock on the right side. So now the question becomes, what is he exactly going for when it comes to military composition? Looks like he went out with the villagers towards the Ovu. That's what I wanted to say, the Ovu. So he went out with the villagers towards the Ovu. I think he's just going for berries. Mista using the scouts as a cheap torch unit to burn down the towers. Ultimately, he would be better off using horsemen because they basically deliver the same amount of torch damage as scouts do. However, scouts are much cheaper, and scouts do heal back up. So the advantage here is that you're absorbing damage with your scouts and you can heal those back up. Arrow slits completed, however, for Leenock, and that's going to add a lot of extra firepower onto that tower. There is also two spearmen garrison, and you see Leenock is trying to focus down the archers. He knows exactly that the scouts can heal back up, and now he pops out the spearman the moment the archers back off. Beautiful micro here by Leenock, and really, he's maximizing the damage output of this tower, making sure that he's taking down as many archers as he can, because it's all about that delay game right now. Now, looking at the resources of Leenock on the top right, you can see that he's pretty far away from Castle Age, so he's not going to play a fast castle over here, something that you commonly see from Mongols going for so much Dark Age aggression, but he was able to set Mista back quite a bit. We don't have a kill-death indicator, I do believe, but Mista has lost a tremendous amount of archers, and now you see the horsemen coming in. First, the horseman upgrade for Leenock. He's got 340 stone in the bank, so he can easily afford to double produce the horsemen quite easily. And this is why I said that I think in the long run for Mista it would have been better to just go horseman, because the torch damage would have been the same. Of course he can't heal them back up, but you have to consider another factor as well, that being the fact that the horsemen deliver much more combat value beyond their torches. So these scouts can't really do much. Still more scouts are being added by Mista here. I'm really wondering if professional scouts is going to be part of the equation now, because with the horsemen coming out for Leenock, he could deny all the hunts, and Mista has been mixing in those scouts with his army. Now, if he wants to go professional scouts, now he has the gold for it. You see 193 on the top left, so he's going to be able to research that tech if he wants to. He's also floating a ton of wood, and he suddenly lost 200 gold from his bank. I think he's going for professional scouts over here. That's not a tech that you can see in the tech indicators below the names of the players. The concern here for Mista is that he's up against horsemen and spearmen. That's a very dangerous composition. Generally speaking, horseman spearmen nowadays is beating the cavalry plus archer composition of players. That could be knights archers, that could be horseman archers, or even scouts archers at this point. And this is the worrisome part for Mista. Look at where his hunts are situated. Both of them are on the right side of the base, quite far away. So Leenock has all the tools in the world to deny all those hunts, and in that case, professional scouts would be a waste of resources. I'm not sure if Mista canceled that because he has gotten a ton of gold back, so the appropriate reaction here from Mista would be to cancel that. Defense upgrade coming in for the Pierce Armor for Leenock. He's seeing the archers, he needs that extra defense on the horseman and the spearman as well. As he's moving towards those hunts, he knows very well that Mista has a lot of scouts, so professional scouts is part of the equation here, potentially, for Mista. Indeed, here comes the professional scouts play from Mista, so looks like he did not cancel this one, but keep in mind, now the scouts are moving slower, and this is an opportunity for Leenock to potentially intercept some of those scouts. Now, when you go for professional scouts, you want to at least scoop up 2 patches of huntables, so 4 deers carcasses won't really justify the investment into professional scouts, even with the discount that the French are given. So you gotta wonder if Mista's gonna be able to access more hunts over here. He needs to, because right now, that investment hasn't paid off just yet. He sort of needs the food. As you see underneath his town center, he's got no sheep to work with, and his berries are also running dry, which means that he's in desperate need of food. Now, Leenock is also in the need of food right now, and he's venturing all the way to the right side for berries. Little risky, because a couple of knights could easily raid that. But since Mista's army is mostly archers, I think Leenock is just satisfied with that one. He doesn't think that he's going to get spotted over there. I love the move that Leenock is situating his con inside the stealth forest, because this is something that gives him vision over this position, and he knows exactly where the archers are at. The horsemen were hidden in that stealth forest, and there is no scout over here for Mista, which means that it's possible he didn't spot those forces out there. The scouts are moving to the left side. It's a little difficult to commentate things when the observer is not exactly showing what you actually want to talk about. I know I should be talking about what the observer is showing us, but it's day number 1, and I think the observer that's doing this is new to the... I'm not saying new to the scene, but he's definitely new to observing. So, let's just be patient with him, because it's very possible that he also needs to catch up a tiny bit. Anyways, nice move from Mista to be able to pick up some of the carcasses from the northern hunt. But there is already a ram coming in, and now would be a great question to see if Mista has vision on those units in that stealth forest, because he's got a tower. So you gotta ask the question, does he see those units in the stealth forest? Because if he doesn't, then he could be in trouble. If he sees them, he should know that there is an attack coming his way very soon. Knights moving in, intercepting a couple of bell villagers over here. Nice way for Mista to retaliate for some of his earlier losses. That's going to be 2 villagers down. And now, potentially, you could see those knights trying to burn down some pastures around that Ovu. But look at that, there comes the attack. Villagers garrisoning into the towers. You got 2 towers worth of firepower, but there's also a battering ram, and the spearman also able to jump on the cavalry. This is what I was talking about. Just the flood of melee units could be enough to overrun an opponent. And remember, every single building set on fire gives resources to the Mongols as well. Here comes Leenock to swarm it, and the archers are just not there in good numbers. Look at the Mongol swarm getting unleashed all on those French units out here. Mista is trying to add some spearmen to deal with this one, but it's just pure numbers game right now. Looks like we are going to see Leenock call off this assault for the time being. He's playing this one patiently, he's playing this one carefully, but I feel like he has already inflicted a lot of damage, and if he commits to this, I think he can win this battle. The knights are coming back, spearmen in good numbers. Mista still trying to focus down all those spears, trying to make sure that his knights can operate as safely as possible, but the losses are huge here. The losses are just gigantic right now for Mista. He has lost some villagers. The good news for him is that he's still at 47 if you look at the top left corner, and for Leenock it's only 39. But the Mongols' economy is very efficient, very effective, so you see Leenock is getting ready for Castle Age. Mista is also getting close to Castle as well. But the main concern here, I think, for Mista is that once we get to Castle Age, Leenock is really going to start unleashing the efficiency of the Mongols, because you're going to see the step redoubt appearing that's going to compensate for that villager discrepancy. But here comes Mista, and this could be a great opportunity to retaliate for those losses. Knights are moving in on the lumberjacks. That is going to be, I think, 1 villager getting picked off. Now the knights trying to get intercepted by the spears. Horsemen also chasing them as we speak. Castle Age on the way for Mista. Leenock is not going up just yet, I do believe, as Mista is aging with the guild hall. We're seeing the Royal Institute being used more and more, especially in 1v1s nowadays. But if you're going for a man-at-arms play, which seems to be the case over here, or potentially spears even, for Mista, depending on how much cavalry Leenock goes for, then the guild hall makes a lot more sense. Now, there's a lot of horsemen over here for Leenock, so you can 100% justify going for the guild hall over here, and Leenock is still not aging, which is getting a little concerning. He's floating 1,000 food, 900 gold, so he's not far away, but he got disrupted a tiny bit, and since now you have map control for Mista, he's able to start picking up those carcasses, and he's going to have a good food eco to work with for the next couple of minutes. Wouldn't be surprised to see that guild hall being set on food, because he's got a reliable gold income, but since he doesn't have a long-term food eco, he doesn't have farming set up, you could justify going for the food at the beginning and only later switch to gold. Looks like knights will loop around once again, and you could see for a brief moment that Mista is preparing a man-at-arms push, not something that you necessarily expect from the French. And look at the right side now. I was referring to that before. It's a very risky move from Leenock to move towards those berries. Because he is basically gambling on the fact that Mista will never search for him over there. But this is something that I've been saying for a long time. Every once in a while, you want to probe these berries. Probe those faraway gold mines, probe the berries, because you might find some value there, and that's exactly what we have seen over there for Mista. Now, Leenock is going to retaliate over here on the own berries of Mista, so both sides losing about 3-4 villagers, but you see the forces of Mista moving towards the base of Leenock here, and Leenock has no defense back at home. There is just dozens of archers getting unleashed on the villagers, and they don't care. They just run into the range of the town center, and you see that the forces of Leenock are distracted on the right side, all the villagers getting garrisoned into the town center, and you got castle age here for Leenock, but does he have the resources to mass an army here? Because at this point, Mista is going all in here. Leenock is losing a tremendous amount of villagers. He's down to 37. And now a lot of his villagers are just simply idle, being chased by men-at-arms, being chased by archers as well. And the men-at-arms are perfect to soak up the damage. Mista is coming back. And with that, Leenock is in trouble. I do think that the cameras are a little off sync, because you could already see Mista being very happy, and indeed he is. Mista's got the game. Looks like the cameras are like 5 seconds before the actual gameplay feed. Getting overrun by the forces of Mista. The counterattack with the knights was probably what sealed the deal here. And look at that smile here for Mista. Leenock losing game number 1, and Mista now has the lead. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 2. In between the Mista and Leenock, we're going to Altai, which is the first home map of Leenock. Spawning in on the left side of the map, we'll have Leenock playing as the Chinese in red, and to the right side, we'll have Mista playing in his blue with the English. Two traditional Altai civilizations, one known for its early aggression, and the other known for that economy power out here. Chinese having a great economy, having a lot of options with the Song Dynasty, double town centers, or a fast castle, palace guards, nest of bees, so many options here for Leenock, whereas for English, it's a lot more straightforward of a civilization to play, but Mista is known for delivering potentially unique and crazy strategies even, so you gotta wonder what Mista has on his mind, because if there is anyone that's going to surprise the opponent in this tournament when it comes to strategy selection, that is going to be the Mista. Both players operating with one scout, as you could see, and both of them are moving to the outer rim immediately, trying to secure as many sheep as they can. It looks like we're going to have a fairly wide crossing all across the middle, and if you look at the forest spawns, that actually helps a little bit for Mista to wall off his base on the right side, whereas for Leenock, his forests are both on the left side, leaving his right side very open, which is a bit of a disaster against the English that are just so good with the early aggression with the longbows. For Leenock, he's opening up with the mill, as you would expect it for the Chinese. He also has a lumber camp already. He's supervising the mill the mill right now. And you will have a villager being sent out to gold. That's your first decision point when you're playing the Chinese, whether you send the villager to gold or not, or you potentially send 2. But the idea is that you can get to feudal age using the tax gold income from the lumber camp and the mill. Now, if you do that, you delay your feudal age a tiny bit and you won't have a huge gold bank, which means that you will delay your Song Dynasty quite a bit. On the other hand, if you send villagers to gold, you will have a much faster feudal age time, and in most cases, you just leave those villagers on gold and try to squeeze out a fast Song Dynasty. So we'll have to see if that is the game plan there for Leenock. He's getting close to feudal age with the resources, as you see. He's actually a tiny bit ahead compared to Mista, as you would expect with the Chinese supervising that mill for some extra food income. Leenock is also leveraging the fact that when the deer is close to his mill, he's killing them. So he's actually gathering from deer and supervising that mill, making it as efficient as possible. Meanwhile, the second supervisor is also out, supervising the lumber camp now, and you're going to have the council hall come in here for Mista, so no cheesy Abbey of the Kings approach over here, and we are seeing a mill being dropped. Now, this is a very traditional Mista build, and the idea is that you're going to have a lot of farming ecos set up early, and this could be great against the Chinese because you don't expect the Chinese to put up a lot of pressure. So what Mista does with this build, very often, is just focus a lot on that farming economy, barely making any army. And the idea is that you're playing a very defensive gameplay and set up that English farming eco. That's going to skyrocket your food economy, and this allows you to get a very nice castle age timing out. We have seen this build from Mista multiple times in the qualifiers of N4C and other tournaments as well, and it's a very effective build. And I think it has a great matchup against the Chinese as well, because as I said, the Chinese won't really be putting out a lot of aggression over here, or at least you wouldn't expect them to do it. So Mista can get away with this one, and the reason why you're going up with the Council Hall is because even if you get pushed, you will have the option to mix in a couple of longbows and just play defensive. But as you see, he's pretty heavy on the lumberjacking department, and you will expect to see a couple of farms being dropped. You see, he's not even touching his hunt, because he knows very well that he's just going for the farming. Of course, it's a bigger investment, you could just go for the hunt anyways, but that bigger investment pays off really fast, because those farmers will return the investment of the farms quite rapidly. A stable is being dropped by Leenock over here, so he wants to put up some aggression. Stable opening, very common against the English, because you're expecting longbows. We'll have to see how aggressive Leenock will play though, because this might just be a preemptive measure to try and stop a potential longbow push. And you see, Mista is barely making army. He's dropping a barracks right now, because he knows very well that if he's going for longbows, there is going to be horsemen appearing on the battlefield, but if you look at that council hall, you can't see any army being produced. This is the typical Mista play here. He's barely making army. He's going to pop out some units, and you see his blue scout is getting close to that Barbican of the Sun. It's a little difficult to see on the minimap, but you see that blue dot to the right side of that red landmark. He's probably aware of that stable right now, and I would be very surprised if he popped out a lot of longbows. He'll probably just go for a couple of spearmen to defend here. Scout is accompanying the first horseman for Leenock, so he's going to expand his vision a tiny bit. And the second horseman is also out. Leenock is still heavy on the gold department though, so I'm suspecting a fast Song Dynasty over here. If you look at his resources, that's the direction we're heading. Mista is just now finishing with his wheelbarrow attack, and you see that the first horseman will try to hit the gold miners. Mista staying on gold for the time being, despite not using it, is another sign that he would just go heavy on the farming and try to fast castle this one. Not a single farm drop just yet, but he's focusing on the barracks, and it looks like he actually pulled away the villager from making the barracks. That's a little surprising. He didn't finish it. I wonder if that's intentional or not, but knowing Mista, it's probably intentional. That barracks hasn't taken a single bit of damage, so when you delete it, you should get all the investment back, and I guess he's waiting for his opponent to see how many horsemen are coming in. The longbows will deploy their playlings as the first couple of horsemen hit the gold miners. One longbow gets taken down, but no villagers are lost here. I guess Mista just wanted to hold off those horsemen with the longbow palings, but it wasn't really successful. He still hasn't finished the barracks though, and now he cancels it. That's what I was talking about. That you could potentially switch into even double stables here for Mista, and look at the mind games here from him. Imperial Academy coming in for Leenock on the northern side of the map, and you could see for a brief moment that Mista sent his scout back in. He wanted to see what reaction Leenock made. That was the idea. This was the idea here the whole time for Mista. Make it seem like you're building a barracks, because this will force Leenock to potentially add archer ranges and archers, and now he's switching into double stables. Now, Leenock didn't take the bait here, and he's just going for fast Song Dynasty, which will start giving him an eco lead. And you see, if you switch to the POV, this is not something that Leenock has scouted just yet. He's got no idea about the double stables, and now Mista is mixing things up here because he's starting to add a lot of horsemen, and that could give him a tremendous raiding potential. Farms already being dropped in, and if you look at the food income, right now it's better for Leenock. It's 606 per minute as opposed to 400, but soon that will change. You will see the food eco for Mista skyrocket as you see that income per minute increase steadily. Looks like we're gonna have a blacksmith come in here for Leenock, and now he's dropping a barracks, so he probably has scouted those stables by now, and he's going to have some spearmen appearing on the battlefield very soon. He's not supervising any production buildings, he's actually supervising all of his drop-off sites instead. Now Mista, adding a second mill with the farms. As I said, the key question is how aggressive Mista is going to play in here. Because if he's realizing that his opponent isn't going to push him, just boom with the farms, get to castle age, and you could potentially drop your second town center, the King's Palace, to keep on with the villager production from 2 town centers and sort of have a comparable villager count to the Chinese. Or you could even go quite aggressive, leverage your better castle age timing, go for men-at-arms, knights, and potentially even a forward white tower in the middle of the map to control the map. Leenock is apparently going for a fast castle over here. He has the Song Dynasty, but he's not going to play with a second town center, he's not mining stone, instead banking up resources for Castle Age. Those are the three ingredients for a Chinese player. The second town center, the Song Dynasty, and Castle Age. And you basically just shuffle the order of these. Scout here for Mista will see the hidden forces of Leenock, and Leenock is going to have to pull those back. This is the moment where Leenock gets 100% confirmation that Mista is coming in with a couple of horsemen. I would think that he just wants to force Leenock to make a couple of spears over here. Just make him invest a tiny bit more into army. If you look at the resources, both players will probably get to Castle Age at identical times, or at least comparable times. Leenock moving up with the villagers, now dropping the clock tower back at home, cancels it. He's a little indecisive about where to place it, and now he's going to place it on the front over here. Meanwhile, for Mista, he's ready to age up as well, and now we'll see if he's going for King's Palace or the White Tower. Looks like it's a back position, so it's going to be a King's Palace for him. Looks like the villagers are actually having a hard time finding their way over there. That was a little weird. But here comes the King's Palace. Now if you see the food income as though, and this is what I was referring to when I said the farming eco kicking in, it's way better for Mista. And if you look at Leenock, he's consuming his final hunts and sheep, which means that soon he's gonna have to move towards the berries, which are both exposed, or have to start adding farms. And the magic of this build here for Mista is that he already invested a ton of wood into those farms, so now he's just leveraging the return value. Whereas for Leenock, he's yet to invest all those resources into farming, and that's going to be a quite heavy burden on his eco. Currently it's 40 villagers versus 35, so only a slight villager lead right now for Leenock. Leenock also has gotten the melee attack upgrade, as you see over here, and he is grabbing the range defense upgrade. You can see that on the overlay below his name with that circle around the upgrades. I assume that means that he's researching these, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. He's potentially expecting some longbows to hit the field as well, because that's the danger of the English with the council hall. They can always start popping out some longbows from that council hall and increase their numbers quite rapidly. It's going to be knights opening here for Mista. No man-at-arms for him. Nest of Bees will be the response, at least for the potential archer play from Mista. Now, at this point, do I see barracks coming up north? Nope, it's a monastery. So, with the monastery, you could start picking up relics. There is 2 relics rather close to the base of Leenock, so that would be an easy extra gold income for him. And the idea is that neither of the players are contesting the map right now, which means that you could easily pick up 1 or 2 relics, and if the game goes very long, that's gonna be a very nice extra source of gold. First Lancer out as well for Leenock. It will meet some knights over here. So for the time being, both of the players are poking and probing, but really hasn't been inflicting a ton of damage. Mista does lose his scout on the left side, however, as the horsemen will trade blows against each other. The scout of Leenock will survive for the time being, so that extra vision is going to come in very handy for him. Villager count still rather close. There's only a discrepancy of 4, but keep in mind that English farming eco is starting to skyrocket. Monastery coming out from Mista as well. Once again, it's sort of territorial control right now, rather passive gameplay, and it's all about making sure you don't make a mistake. You can see the pressure on both of these players, knowing that there's a lot on the line. If Mista wins this game, he's 2-0 against Leenock and would move on to match point in this best of 5. Whereas for Leenock, this is his first home map, so it's almost a must-win for him. 2 knights will loop around here for Mista. We have seen in the previous game that just a couple of random knights looping around, finding exposed resources could be a great way to hit your enemy. You could potentially find 3, 4, 5 villager kills. Looks like we'll have Spearmen being added right now by Leenock, and this could be a dangerous composition to fight against for the English. Spearman Nest of Bees is something that's really difficult to deal with unless you have Springolds. But there is not a single Springold right now for Mista, not even a Siege Workshop to build any. Clock Tower continuously popping out the Nest of Bees. Mista will loop around with those knights. You can see them on the minimap up north. He's about to arrive. Whereas for Leenock, he's just massing forces back at home, also grabbing a ton of upgrades. You see that he has gotten the lumber camp upgrade, he's gotten the mining camp upgrade already, also horticulture. So he's focusing a lot on his economy in terms of upgrades. Whereas for Mista, he's using 2 town centers, but he's trying to be a little aggressive as those blue knights just arrived to the base of Leenock here. Looks like our observer lost track of them for a brief moment, but they're right now hitting the eco of Leenock, actually. You can see those attack notifications inside his base. And Leenock himself might be distracted because he's microing his forces in the middle. Those knights now on the gold mine, they're killing quite a lot, and it looks like we have some knights moving in from the left side as well for Mista. He sort of pulled the pincer move over here, moved in from the left, moved in from the right, and those knights on the right side are still killing villagers. Look at the amount of dead bodies around that gold mine. That had to be at least 6-7 villagers potentially being picked off. The villager count of Leenock now down to 52. That was a perfect move from Mista. He moved in from the middle. That's where Leenock was focusing. That's where our observer was focusing even. And on the right side and left side, 2 knights each came in and picked off at least 6 or 7 villagers out here. Now, despite the fact that Leenock had the Song Dynasty the whole time, Mista actually has the villager lead. You could see Leenock dropping a second town center, so he will be able to recuperate those losses. But if you add this to the fact that Mista already has a very well set up food economy with the farming, this is getting concerning for Leenock over here. Because Mista, now with 900 food per minute, his eco is turning into a juggernaut, and we are yet to receive an Imperial Age upgrade from him. And once he gets to Imperial with the enclosure stack, he's going to have an insane gold income from those farms as well. So the longer this game goes, the worse it is for Leenock, although Chinese late game is also very powerful. So that's an interesting consideration for either of these players to take. English late game economy is extremely powerful, but the Chinese late game army is also extremely powerful. So Vololo attempt coming in here from Leenock. He's going to lose the monk though. The knights pick it off, and there's a monk coming in from Mista to pick up the relic. So Vololo attempt couldn't save the life of that monk, and you see Leenock is slowly walling up. There's an attack notification going off on the left side. I wonder if that's just a wolf. It has been going on for a long time, so I don't think it's a knight. But if it's a wolf, it could potentially kill the villager. Looks like our observer won't be switching over there for the time being. Knights looping around, staying hidden in the stealth forest. They will have a window to jump on those forces. And look at that, Mista is pulling up the walls over here. He wants to sort of pin his opponent in, and indeed, there is a wolf out there. The villager might actually be able to escape if he moves in. Nope, not at all. If the villager just runs in there and then quickly builds the wall behind him, you could have saved that villager, but Leenock probably wasn't looking. It's only one villager, so it's not the end of the world, but every single detail could matter in a close game like this one. And you see, Mista is moving on for a sacred sites. I think he just wants to go for a sacred sites at this point. He tried to wall up the right side, he's pushing up walls on the left side, you can see it on the minimap, and his forces are in the middle. Which means that he probably wants to start capping those sacred sites, and now the longbows will have an absolute fiesta on those villagers. Leenock is very heavily invested into spears, but there's only one nest of bees out there that could potentially be even sniped by that knight. Longbows open up against the villagers, nest of bees will come in now. You could see that Mista is using line formation to spread out his longbows a little bit more, give him a little bit more surface to hit those villagers with. 2 relics right now in the possession of Leenock, and for Mista he also has 2. And is that an Imperial officer or a villager? There was one economic unit chasing that knight, was picked off by the longbows. Now the villager count is dead even. But as you see, Leenock is banking up a ton of resources, so Chinese efficient economy is still kicking in. He's taking the hunt on the right side. He's still yet to transition to farms, but for now, he has the berries, he's got the hunts, so he can delay that transition as much as possible. Mista's food income now 1,300 food per minute. His gold income is also looking pretty sharp, but his wood income is much lower than that of Leenock's, and Leenock is also mining stone, which could give him a chance for a potential forward keep in the middle to start securing those sacred sites. Now, on the left side, those walls will be completed, and there's the keep we are talking about. Leenock is going to have enough stone for a second keep soon, but is that keep going up? That's the question, because the villagers will be pushed away for the time being. Nest of bees ready to set up and open up against the cavalry, but they are left very exposed. If the cavalry loops around, they could hit the nest of bees, and that's exactly what Mista has on his mind. The cavalry will try to jump on the nest of bees. Longbows are spread out as well, and you can see behind that castle, the cavalry is coming in from the behind, and that is the perfect pincer move once again from Mista. He knows very well that he needs to pick off those nest of bees, and that exactly is what he's going to do. He's going to misclick to the barracks though, and this is going to mean that the nest of bees are still alive. 4 of them on the battlefield. Many knights are getting picked off by the spearman, and you gotta wonder if this was mismicroed heavily here by Mista. Villagers will just scramble to try and finish that keep over there, as the knights and the longbows will pick off as many as they can. Looks like the keep is going to go up, and with that, Mista is going to lose a large number of his forces, but so many villagers were sacrificed here for Leenock. He's down to 66 eco. I feel like this is one of those scenarios where Mista didn't have a decisive win here, but he was able to carve out a fairly significant lead from this battle. It could have been better if the knights were able to pick off the nest of bees, but that wasn't a possibility. And now he has to be satisfied with the fact that he killed some villagers here from Leenock. Looking at the resources, Mista seems like he's thinking about banking up the resources for Imperial Age. He's got the gold, and the food isn't really a big deal. As you see, 1400 food per minute gives him just one window, or 1 minute to wait before Imperial Age. He walled off the left side, and I think he's successful walling off the right side as well. So he's going to have 2 sacred sites that will be quite difficult for Leenock to contest. You can see some palace guards being mixed in here now by Leenock, so he's realizing that he needs something against those longbows that's different from the nest of bees. So I wonder what Mista's response will be to that. Mista's very heavy on the gold now, still not climbing on the food department, so he's consuming a lot of food. When he has such a large food income and he's not climbing on the food department, that's a sign that he's consuming all of it. Potentially for knights, longbows, we're seeing a market come up as well for Mista, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him buying some food. Sacred site in the middle captured now by Leenock. He's got a scary force now. That's a lot of nest of bees. The real thing that Mista would need is springalds. He wants to go into Imperial and he's launching counterattack with the cavalry. He's realizing that the army of Leenock is disturbingly slow. Spearmen, palace guards, and nest of bees, they're all very slow. Defensive Berkshire Palace on the way for Mista, and you could see that Mista is sending out those knights towards the hunts. He's also detaching a couple towards that gold mine out there. And here we go. This is all about that. Every time you have to probe those resources, see if there is any enemies over there. Because at some point Leenock might move out, and there is a village that was completed. And in the village you could have jumped in and saved a couple of villagers. It's not going to be a tremendous amount of losses, but it's all about the timings here for Mista. Look at what he accomplished with this. He was able to force Leenock all the way back into his base by just using 4 knights, and now he is going to have his window to get to Imperial. This is all that Mista wanted to accomplish. He just wanted to make sure that he's not going to get pushed before he gets into Imperial. Now the Berkshire Palace will allow him to start making siege weapons as well if he wishes to. And it looks like he's switching into men-at-arms because I saw some barracks being dropped already. Longbows now increasing in numbers. Once you get to Imperial, you will be able to unlock the volley technology. You will have, of course, elite longbows coming in as well. And there is clad armor, man-at-arms upgrade as well. There is still a window here for Leenock to potentially push his opponent, and he's not far away from Imperial either. So Mista's position here, while it's looking decent, it's not perfect because that's a lot of forces coming in here. 48 army for Mista, 66 military population for Leenock, but a lot of that is spearmen. And the nest of bees would be great if there is no springolds for Mista. Mista needs 3 or 4 springolds, and he's gonna be able to deal with this one without problems. There's the first springold coming out. Volley from the nest of bees will wipe out some of the longbows over here. First springold, however, doing the work, and you see that Leenock is realizing that he needs to pull those units to kill the springold. Springold micro tiny bit here by Mista, and that springold will get taken down, but the Berkshire Palace is helping a lot, and look at the arrow fire coming in from those longbows. It's the network of castles bonus supported by the Berkshire Palace, and this is turning into a massacre. This is turning into a massacre. All those spearmen getting wiped out. Suddenly Leenock just lost 20 units with basically no tangible result. Villager counts still in the favor of Mista, and you see Mista is even sending a couple of longbows around to try and harass the opponent as much as possible. Poor lady was somehow in the middle of the battlefield, got wiped out as well by the nest of bees. If you can get a couple more springolds out from Mista, this is going to be difficult to deal with for Leenock, but Leenock is on the way to Imperial as well. Or is he? I would assume he is, because he dropped in resources. He kind of needs to get to Imperial, because without Imperial Age, he's not going to have a ton of things going for him. And look at the longbows. Just 2 longbows being sent in here. Indeed, that's Imperial Age, and that is a university being supervised by Leenock. So he wants to get one of the technologies really fast over here. I think on the right side, we're seeing the technology is also being researched. There is like a far right panel. I wonder what he was researching. The Imperial officer survives, so he's going to be able to finish whatever he was doing over there. And Leenock is getting back in the villager department. But Mista is ready to switch into man-at-arms now, and that knight could actually torch down a couple of those nest of bees. In the previous patch, the knights and in general cavalry was buffed heavily against siege weapons, so even just a couple of torches can burn down some of those expensive nest of bees. We will never know if that actually happened, because it looks like we're not going to focus over there. Instead, we are going to have a look at the base of Mista. In the middle, you do have the sacred site for Leenock. The right side one belongs to Mista. And on the left side, I see a unit moving up towards the sacred site. I think that's going to be a monk. Indeed, it is. And with that, that's going to be 2 sacred sites for Mista. Relic-wise, we have 3 for Mista, 2 for Leenock, so that's going to be a nice advantage as well. But the real advantage now for Mista, economy-wise, will be the enclosures. Look at that gold income for Mista. He's got 1600 gold per minute. I don't see a villager indicator how many villagers Mista has on each resource. However, 1600 gold per minute is a lot, and I don't think that he's mining gold with like 60 villagers. So that is mostly coming from enclosures. Big army coming out now for Leenock though, and he's getting those Chinese clock tower bombards up. Elite army tactics also coming in for Leenock. So he's going infantry, nest of bees, bombards, traditional Chinese composition. And what's the plan here for Mista? We're seeing some longbows hit the field. We're seeing some knights, horsemen hit the field as well. Some springalds also added. The problem here for Mista is that now his unit composition will be inferior. Because in Imperial Age, the economy for the English is way better, but the army for the Chinese is substantially better than the English, and you gotta wonder what exactly the unit composition will be here for Mista. If this was an open map, you could just raid with your cavalry, so the unit composition wouldn't be that big of a factor. But in closed map like Altai, unit composition is a significant factor because you almost guaranteed is the fact that you have to push in the middle. Or maybe on the sides, but whatever happens, you have to make a direct push instead of sort of just flank around, raid, use mobility whatsoever. Looks like Leenock is patiently building up his forces, both players at around 180-190 population. Leenock actually needs one more house to get to 200 pop, whereas for Mista, he's at 180 population right now. 78 military population for Leenock, 67 for Mista. Mista's a little slow, adding some more army over here, because he's still missing some population, and it looks like he's moving out towards those stone mines. Now, one of the things that he could do with the English is leverage the network of castles or network of citadels bonus, so slowly crawl up with towers or potentially even keeps, and just buff his army with the aura of those buildings, because that would be a great way to sort of gain himself or gain an advantage for himself in a battle in the middle. Looks like some men-at-arms are being added. They do have the clad armor, so they're very dangerous against the palace guards, very dangerous against the spearmen. However, they will struggle against that many nest of bees, and it looks like here comes Leenock. Enough springolds are there, however, for Mista to try and take down those nest of bees, and this is gonna come down to whether or not he can take down those nest of bees. Nest of bees open up against the cavalry, some cavalry units charging into the spears over here. Mista is still playing this one patient. He's got a trebuchet out as well with the English shattering projectiles upgrade. Nest of bees crawling closer and closer to the castle. Springolds don't have a line of sight on them, but now they have a volley coming out. Nest of bees getting taken down over here, but they're very effective against the infantry of Mista. Longbows still in the aura of the keep over here, and the nest of bees are slowly being taken down by not only the keep, but the springolds and the trebuchet as well. First bombard just now arriving here for Leenock. He's charging him with everything that he's got, but his numbers are getting decimated so rapidly. And the springolds are still alive. They're taking down all the siege weapons here from Leenock, and now the longbows with the flaming projectiles, they will just take down all the infantry. And with that, Leenock's attack is repelled here. His army numbers absolutely shattered. His resource bank is sufficient to rebuild that army, but now Mista is the one that could potentially take the role of the aggressor. He needs some siege weapons to try and push the middle area here, but this defense was just great. Shows you the power of the English defense, really, because English is one of the best defensive civilizations exactly for this reason. The network of citadels bonus, the ability to buff those springolds even with the network of citadels bonus was immensely helpful as well, and of course those longbows, huge factor, and you see a trebuchet coming out. The trebuchet with the shattering projectiles, that's not a joke anymore. It's an expensive siege weapon, and bombards in Imperial Age are probably still a little better, but for the English, with the shattering projectiles doing area damage, it's actually a quite intriguing siege weapon, and the thing that makes it great is that it outranges cannon. So, if Mista were to do just bombard cannons over here, he would be taken down by the cannon of the Chinese player. But he can't take down the trebuchet with the cannon, at least not easily. He can of course get closer, but if he gets closer, the cavalry could snipe it. it's not an even range scenario. And you see the bombards are crawling up towards that trebuchet, but the springboards are just enough to take all of those down. And here comes the infantry charge. A lot of the palace guards are also in the party, and it looks like the clock tower bombards will open up against the springboards. Cavalry is jumping on the bombards, however, all the springboards are down, but so are all the infantry units here from Leenock. They're trying to charge in on that trebuchet. All the infantry gets cleaned up. The bombards somehow survive, but there is a wave of cavalry coming in, and only a couple of torches remain to take down those bombards out there. Infantry once again charging in. It's all about those longbows and the men-at-arms. The bombards are still alive with low HP out there, but Mista is crawling up more and more, getting closer and closer to that keep, and every single battle that he's taking is slightly more effective than the ones from Leenock over here. Look at that. Despite the fact that Palace Guards are technically meant to counter longbows, that's the power of the network of Citadels bonus, that's the power of the potential volley ability, and that's the power of those very tanky men-at-arms that are able to absorb so much damage. And now, you see those longbows potentially even trying to contest those cannon. With the flaming arrows, they can take down cannon even. You see some Nest of Bees arriving on the battlefield. In the middle, a keep was dropped on the right side by Leenock, but the main battle is happening in the middle, and you see the Nest of Bees are being pulled back. Now there is a big danger here for Mista though. He needs to be careful not to go under that castle, but instead he's going to just charge in with some of the cavalry, trying to snipe some of the bombards. Looks like the cavalry will get wiped out, however, so the bombards stay alive. The only ingredient missing for Mista is some anti-building siege. Right now he's utilizing the trebuchet to take down the keep on the right side, but this gives a bit of a breathing room here for Leenock, and he's going to utilize that to regroup. He needs to desperately regroup over here, making some palace guards over here. Some Nest of Bees would be much needed as well, because he needs something against that many longbows. On the right side, the keep is slowly getting cleaned up. That is one of the big gold mines for Leenock to work with, however. And we haven't talked about that. Look at the big gold mine spots. One of them is over there. The other one is on the far left. Leenock could soon have issues accessing gold. And while the Chinese unit composition late game is spectacular, without gold, it's not going to be great at all. And if you look at the gold income per minute for Leenock, it's 370 per minute. It's terrible. It's a terrible gold income already, and if he can't secure this gold mine for himself, it will just get worse. Trebuchet now shelling the castle on the left side, and you see some cavalry moving in. Trebuchet is working to great effect over here, and it looks like the horsemen will just ignore the keep and run straight into the eco of Leenock. They will probably try to snipe that bombard. It's a very expensive siege weapon, especially for a player low on gold. Another keep is being attempted on the right side by Leenock. He knows the importance of that gold mine, but he's going to have to abandon that keep in the middle, and the trebuchets will just set up and take down the keep on the right side. Now the palace guards are charging in. Mista trying to build a keep over there. I'm not exactly sure why we're not looking at the battle, to be honest, because there's a big battle unfolding on the right side. Looks like a lack of crossbowmen, men-at-arms is actually a problem over here right now for Mista, because he doesn't have anything to absorb the charge of those palace guards. But you see trebuchets are realigning themselves to the right side, and the shattering projectiles will wreak havoc amongst the ranks of those infantry units out there. Longbows, once again, with the hill advantage over here. Villagers repairing the keep. Another charge from the left side this time around, trying to jump on those trebuchets. This definitely caught Mista off guard over here, and he's going to lose one of the trebuchets. The second trebuchet is about to go down, and he's losing the keep on the right side as well, potentially to bombard setup by Leenock. Mista getting repelled for the time being. He's struggling a tiny bit to clean up those palace guards. New trebuchets are being rallied to the battlefield, but this gives a bit of a window for Leenock to access that gold mine. A much needed gold mine. Another tower being pushed up here by Mista. He just wants to expand his influence with the network of castles as much as possible. Longbows will try to open up against the villagers on the right side. It's all about dealing with those vills and preventing the opponent from accessing that gold mine. Cavalry charging in on the bombards and the Nest of Bees as well. Palace guards trying to fight in the middle, trying to reach those trebuchets out there. Villagers will be taken down here from Leenock. That's not even a question. The question is, how many siege weapons can he keep alive? In the middle, palace guards once again jumping on the trebuchet over here. Mista having a tough time keeping those alive. And you see that Leenock is repairing those bombards with those villagers non-stop. In the middle, villagers are being sent in by Mista, and am I seeing signs of desperation here for Mista? He's down to 99 villagers, and he's sending villagers to the middle. His population is dropping quite dramatically. His military number is down to 40. Both sides taking significant casualties over here. Because Leenock needs that gold mine so badly, I still think that Mista is leading, but his momentum also disappeared here for a brief moment. He's going to snap that bombard on the left side, however, and he's going to have a window to kill the Nest of Bees and the second bombard as well. And on the right side, those longbows are doing work. They're being killing villagers left and right. Both sides below 100 villagers now, but look at that flood of horsemen and men-at-arms. And one thing that we haven't discussed yet is that the way into the base of Leenock is open. He's focusing so much on that goldmine on the right side that now the horsemen can hit his farming eco straight away by just marching forward. It looks like they will focus on those villagers. However, Palace Guards did clean up all of those longbows out there. Bombard once again kept alive by villagers repairing this one. Men-at-arms trying to jump on the bombards on the right side. Those are not being repaired up until now. Villagers being pulled to repair this one. In the smoke, you can't see anything, but you might be able to see that HP bar rising, and Mista is just unable to snipe those bombards out there. Villagers repairing it faster than he can take those down. Springboards hitting the field once again, and look at the population. Maybe this is a bit of an overextension from Mista. Maybe he felt like he can finish this game right here, right now, but he has lost a lot of units and he's down to 123 population, 88 villagers against 106 of the opponent. Military population is still damn close, but Leenock is regaining momentum in this game. A new trebuchet is being pulled up by Mista, but I get the feel that now Mista needs some sort of Mista-style magic over here, or he needs to drag this game out very long, because keep in mind that this gold mine on the right side is also being depleted. So the longer this game goes, the better this will be for Mista, because once that gold mine is gone, it's going to be extremely difficult for Leenock to find any other source of gold. He technically can trade, but that's not something that he has set up at all. On the right side, looks like we're gonna have another charge with the infantry. Infantry once again jumping on the bombards. Some longbows also joined the party over here. Nest of bees firing from behind. And it looks like once again, this is a great battle for Mista this time. He's trying to take down those siege weapons. Some of the bombards are being repaired by Leenock. But you got the springboards pushing up, and it looks like there is going to be a breakthrough on the left side of the lines of Leenock. The springboards are being taken down over here, but so are some expensive siege weapons from Leenock. And keep in mind, every single siege weapon that Leenock loses is extremely impactful, because those are expensive, especially on the gold cost. And you see, villagers are trying their best to repair, but now the flood of men-at-arms supported by the longbows once again gives some momentum to Mista. Trebuchet is once again coming in here. There is still a keep that's preventing Mista from hitting that gold mine out there. Once again, men-at-arms will try to jump on the bombard on the left side. On the right side, we still have a lot of Nest of Bees out there, and you could see that there was even a monk getting picked off in the sacred side. Towers are being placed here by Leenock. He knows the importance of that gold mine. Nest of Bees opening up with volleys on the longbowmen. And you gotta be careful with those longbows, because the Nest of Bees could wipe out the entire army over here. So far, they're focusing on the infantry, but with the men-at-arms gone, the next volley would be unleashed on those longbows. Mista knows that, and he's calling off his forces. Still 2,000 gold in the bank for Leenock, and that gold mine is still not depleted. So there's a long way to go here for Mista to completely starve his opponent out of gold, especially given the fact that the Palace Guards that Leenock is making are not particularly gold-heavy units. And there is 2 relics even for Leenock. I think Mista could really use an attempt to regroup here, because he has been trying to push this one so desperately, but he's getting repelled because he isn't really able to group up his longbows, get some anti-siege weapons, and this ridge in the middle makes things very difficult, because it makes it much more difficult for springboards to get a line of sight on those siege weapons, and it actually allows these Nest of Bees to be very effective from this hilltop, now unleashing death and destruction. Bombards also setting up rather close to the enemies though. Same thing, line of sight is a thing with this ridge being in between the 2 players. Men-at-arms once again coming out now. Nest of Bees will have a completely untouched way of harassing them. And you see some villagers running out of wood here on the front of Mista's base. One thing we haven't talked about is wood. Not something that you have a ton of on this map, and you could see both players struggling with that, and this is something that could haunt Mista. Because his army, the longbows, the siege weapons, even the horsemen, those are wood-heavy units. Now you're seeing some horsemen appearing on the battlefield for Mista, but soon, for Mista, it will make more sense to make lancers rather than horsemen. Because, as you see, there is just no wood left on the map, minimal at least. And now, replenishing those longbows will be difficult. Replenishing siege weapons will be increasingly difficult, and you see, there is only 240 wood per minute as an income for Mista. For Leenock, that's 1,000, so Leenock still has some wood to work with. And it's rather easy to keep those siege weapons alive, because they're clock tower weapons. So it's going to be difficult for Mista to starve his opponent out of resources now. Population is just constantly rising for Leenock, whereas it has been stagnating for a long time for Mista. Leenock might have this game, because Now he's got 53 military population against 35 from Mista. A keep is being dropped in the middle to secure that sacred site, and the bombards are just taking down the entire base of Mista. Mista needs some sort of magic over here. And even then, it's going to be difficult, because you see, there is a bit of a forest in the middle, and that's going to be so vital, because Mista is running out of wood, whereas his opponent isn't. And Mista's composition was so wood heavy that I think he's just now realizing that he's in trouble. Lancers, men-at-arms could actually work very nicely over here, but of course, if Leenock just makes a mixture of palace guards and spearmen, now this is difficult to fight against, and now you see those bombards opening up against the houses. For now, that's not a big deal for Mista, because it's not like he's able to fill up his population space anyway. But that could be a concern soon. It's difficult to say what Mista can do over here. I think his window may have just closed. Simply because it's now going to be very difficult to take this fight and maintain his military presence. But here he goes, and that's a fairly large force of horsemen jumping on those siege weapons. Villagers are being pulled to repair everything over here. Leenock knows that this might be the final battle of the game here. All the villagers are being pulled here. Nest of Bees being taken down by the men-at-arms. It's a little difficult to focus those villagers when there is such a big battle going on with all the smoke out there. The Berkshire Palace is also helping tremendously against the infantry of Leenock. And Leenock just overrunning his opponent, dropping a keep in the face of the opponent. And there's just no army left on the battlefield for Mista. Mista taps out. And with that, Leenock has game number 2. The superior unit composition of the Chinese prevails over the economy of the English. Great game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 3 in this best of 5 between the Mista and Leenock. We're going to Lipany, which is the first home map of Mista. Spawning in on the right side, we will have Leenock playing as the Red Delhi Sultanate, and on the left side, Abbasid is the civilization pick for Mista. It is the berry duo, the two civilizations that became surprisingly powerful based on their berry gathering rates, especially Delhi is now a juggernaut civilization, so this is going to be a tough matchup for Mista. However, we have to keep in mind that Mista has banned the Abbasid dynasty from his opponent, which is a sign that we are talking about a player that really thinks that Abbasids are super powerful. More powerful than Mongols or Delhi, potentially. Because he had the option to ban Mongols or Delhi, he decided to ban Abbasids from the opponent. So he definitely believes in Delhi, as you do have Wheelbarrow coming in here for Leenock. Meanwhile, on the other side, it looks like we're going to have a mill dropped for only Leenock, not a mill just yet for Mista. Mista is just now dropping the House of Wisdom. He's mining gold up front, and you see he's going for a sheep. Now, when you do this, this is a much faster feudal age than actually going for the berries at the beginning. It's actually surprising, but the idea is that the berries get really fast, but you have to invest into that extra mill out there, which means that if you make the mill, the mining camp, and the House of Wisdom, and of course the house at the beginning, you won't have enough wood for a lumber camp, so you will have to take straggler trees. By going for the sheep at the beginning, you can actually accelerate your feudal age and plus the military building added to a certain extent. So it's actually an interesting relation that for the Abbasids, it might actually pay off to still use the sheep, at least at the beginning. At some point, you're going to see Mista transitioning to berries, but it's probably not as urgent as you would see it for Delhi. That's the reason why Leenock is already on berries and Mista isn't. On the way to feudal age is Mista with the economy wing, and on the other side, a mosque is going to be dropped by Leenock. As we see, he's researching wheelbarrow, and he's probably researching forestry as well on that lumber camp. Dome of Faith on the way for him. So he's going to play standard Delhi stuff over here. Dome of Faith right next to the mosque means that the scholars that pop out of that Dome of Faith will be able to jump into that mosque straight away. And it looks like efficient production is going to be the starter for him. As you would expect, he is following that up with piety, however. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, and this is, I think, a great place to talk about it, is the Delhi Sultanate restrictions. Because there is a couple of restrictions, namely that herbal medicine cannot be used. This is a tournament rule because it was deemed extremely powerful. And the other tournament rule is a general rule for all civilizations. You cannot use stone walls or stone wall towers. This is something that affects Delhi quite a bit because this basically makes the compound of the defender a completely useless landmark. So you're always going to see players aging up with the House of Learning simply because the compound of the defender is a landmark that they won't be able to utilize. Looks like a barracks was built over here by Leenock. On the other side, no production building just yet for Mista, but instead he's mining stone. Now, he's pretty heavy on the stone department, and if you look at his stone count right now, it's at 40. It's a little risky to mine a stone that's all the way up front over there, and that's the biggest decision point that you have to make when you're playing a double Town Center Abbasid play. If you're mining stone like this, you have to mine the stone as fast as possible, start as early as possible, because if you're exposed, or if your stone mine is exposed like that, you are sort of risking losing it. So for Mista, he's probably going to be lucky that there isn't going to be immediate aggression from Leenock, so Mista is going to be able to mine enough stone for a second town center here. Now I'm curious to see what exactly Mista has on his mind with the Abbasids over here, because 2 town center boom is nice, but you're going to need something against the Delhi, because if you just sit in your base with 2 town centers, then your opponent will capture all 3 sacred sites and potentially even overrun you with spears and archers with the efficient production. So you gotta be careful here if you're Mista. He has enough wood right now for a second town center. The stone is almost there as well. Other side, for Leenock, he is grabbing the horticulture upgrade right now, mining camp upgrade also coming in, of course, leveraging the fact that Delhi has the free technologies, and we're likely going to see a blacksmith very soon, because he wants to start researching those blacksmith techs. Looks like for now, he's just going to buff that mosque with the next scholar that pops out. He has finished with efficient production, and I do believe that he's coming in for sanctity right now. Indeed, you can see it on the far right, actually. On the far right, the rightmost icon in the top row below the profile picture of Leenock, as we do have... that's... that was weird. That was very weird over here. It looks like our production stuff is still having a bit of an issue over here. So it looks like we're going to be seeing some player POVs shown as well as part of the show over here. And this is the POV now for Mista. You can see his hand moving around. And looks like the overlays didn't work out that well in the previous version. And now you have Leenock. He's using the Korean version of the game. But that's just a small thing over here. Not something that's affecting gameplay by any means. He's got the blacksmith going, and he's starting off with the melee attack upgrade. Already has an archer range as well to work with. You could see for a brief moment that Mista's got the second town center already out. And oh, look at that. We have become enlightened as we're seeing some walls come up from Mista over here. Meanwhile, archer range is going to be his response. It's not going to be easy for him to match the army numbers of the opponent, but I don't think that he even wants to. He just wants to play defensive here, which is a very, very Mista-esque playstyle. Go for an eco-heavy approach and play defensive, force your opponent to make a move. But in this case, it might be risky simply because it's not like Leenock has to make a move necessarily. He just needs to capture the sacred sites and you're fine. And look at all those walls come up on the far left side as well for Mista. So he's going to play a very defensive game over here, wall off his entire base, and he's probably just going to sit in there and boom. For now, it's 28 villagers over 26. But of course, you're soon going to see the first couple of scholars move out. Look at that. That archer was floating around for some time at the top of the screen. Now he's back onto the walking department. So Sanctity is almost completed. You probably want to keep those scholars in that mosque as long as possible so that you get the Sanctity first. But the moment you finish researching it, you have to start sending out your scholars, potentially 1 to each sacred site, because you gotta realize that all 3 sacred sites are open for taking. Now, I saw a Camel Archer for a brief moment for Mista, a unit that he loves to use, and it's a great unit against light infantry, especially spearmen. It does have, I think, plus 20 damage against light infantry, especially spears, which makes it a very good anti-spearman unit. Now, you have to be careful, of course, because the spearmen also do bonus damage against the Camel Archers, so you must make sure that the spearmen cannot close the distance. But ultimately, it could be a great composition, and we have seen horsemen and camel archers work really well in previous sets, especially in the qualifiers, because the camel archers will debuff enemy cavalry, so even if your opponent goes for some cavalry, that's going to be less effective. And the most important thing is that the camel archers are quite tanky. They can pick off spears very easily. The risk that you're taking is that camel archers take a lot of time to train, and they're very expensive, so if you start losing them, you're in trouble. This build and this unit composition relies very heavily on keeping your camel archers alive, and that requires patience. You need to make sure that every fight that you take is 100% going to be effective, because one bad fight and you lose all of your camel archers and it's game over, because it's going to take forever to rebuild them. Looks like walls are coming up in the middle as well for Leenock. He is realizing that he can easily get some walls up in the middle with his military units. Palisade walls are not banned, only stone walls are. So he can start walling off these sacred sites. And you can see that on the right side, he's also capping the sacred site. He's got that one. And on the left side, I do see some blue units in that sacred site. So I assume that the third scholar that was sent to take that sacred site was intercepted. Indeed, it looks like Mista is going to start focusing on that sacred site on the left side. Here comes the scout. Indeed, the scholar is still alive, but with the camel archers approaching, you gotta wonder if that scholar will stay alive, and the answer is probably going to be no. Indeed, the camel archers will pick off the scholar, so only 2 sacred sites under the control of Leenock. Currently, it's a 9 villagers lead for Mista, but look at Leenock. 1,000 food per minute, leveraging the Delhi berries, and leveraging his map control so he can move out for additional berries. And leveraging the sacred site, he's also having pretty decent gold income right now. And you get the feel that he's getting closer and closer to Castle Age. And once he gets there, he can start popping out some Lancers, potentially some Men-at-Arms. And that's going to be difficult to deal with for Mista. And you see, Mista will try to push through the middle now, but since most of his army is actually Camel Archers, it's going to take a lot of time for him to break through those walls. He only has a couple of horsemen to burn those walls down with. Mista is also expanding towards additional berries, so every once in a while you can send over 1 or 2 horsemen to your enemy. This applies to both players. And just try to see if there is any villagers on those berries, because that could be a great way to snipe a couple of vills. Second barracks being added right now by Mista. And I'm starting to get the feel that he wants to go for a full feudal pressure. There is going to be a battle unfolding in the middle, and this is what I was talking about. You have to be very considerate of what fights you take, and look at that swarm of spears and horsemen. This is not a composition that Leenock can fight against, because he needs to individually focus down those spears and constantly retreat. The problem is that the numbers are just so great right now, and Leenock now captured all 3 sacred sites, so he actually triggered the sacred site countdown at around 1040. Now, one of the sacred sites will be neutralized by Mista here, but the problem is that I think Leenock is going into Castle. I'll be very surprised if he wasn't Castle. In fact, he's already in Castle Age. You can see the compound of the defender being placed over here. This is a bit of a surprising move. There's a sacred site countdown on the left side, by the way. I'm just now spotting that, so that overlay is also going to help. Culture Wing on the way for Mista. He's going to neutralize one of the sacred sites, so the sacred site countdown is going to be gone for Leenock. But I'm somewhat puzzled by the compound of the defender choice here, because as I said, you are not allowed to build stone walls, so that landmark is completely useless in the current rules of the tournament. All I'm hoping for is that Leenock remembers that he can't make stone walls, because I don't know what happens if he starts making stone walls. I think if he makes stone walls and deletes them, then he's not going to suffer from any kind of disqualification or penalty. But at this point, the only reason why you would build the compound of the defender would be to get those stone walls going. Looks like it's going to be Men-at-Arms for him. He is playing with triple barracks. And now, not having the House of Learning hurts even more, because this way he can't get owned blades, which would have been a great technology to get an advantage in the quality of your Men-at-Arms over your opponent. Mista is expanding towards the left side as well. He's taking the hunt. On the right side, he's taking the berries. Both players going very aggressive on the berry gathering. And it looks like Mista is expecting cavalry from the opponent in large numbers, because he's stacking into spearmen. You see phalanx upgrade coming in. So he's not really expecting the men-at-arms. And now you're going to see the army of Leenock once again unleashed on the base of Mista. Now you're seeing some men-at-arms hit the field, but it's all about those spears and horsemen right now that could just chase down those camel archers very effectively. I think Leenock has spotted the army inside, and he's like, okay, there's a little too much for me to handle, and we'll need to wait for some more men-at-arms to arrive. Keep in mind that behind this one, you consistently have 2 sacred sites under the control of Leenock, but now you have a 20 villagers lead for Mista. So if you look at the overall ecos, those are fairly comparable. Slight advantage maybe for Mista at this point. First mangonel being constructed right now by Mista as the horseman will try to dive in. The knight actually finds a couple of villagers to potentially kill, and it looks like Leenock is coming in for the kill here. Not something that Mista has reacted to at all. What is Mista going for? What is Mista doing over here? He seemed like he wasn't even noticing this attack coming in, and he was able to just salvage the situation into a loss of 3 villagers. This would have been terrible. The reaction was rather slow here. He maybe was just building the siege weapons and he didn't notice the attack, but he did lose 3 or 4 villagers out there. Third sacred site once again being captured by Leenock. Leenock has spread out all his villagers across the map. You see that at the southern part he has villagers on the berries, on the right side as well. all across the map there are Leenock villagers, which leaves them quite exposed to counterattacks, but it also guarantees that Leenock has an insane food eco, because he's gonna be able to take so many berries. You see berry villagers out here, berry villagers to the right of them, and even on the north there are berry villagers as well. Sacred sites as well now working for him. And on the other side, as you see, right now Mista is taking the hunt on the left, and he also has some berries on the right side. But the map control is slightly bigger for Leenock, so he's gonna have more berries to work with here. Still, 17 villagers lead in the favor of Mista, but if you look at the resource income per minute, that's slightly favoring Leenock right now. He's picking up the relics, which is one of the other advantages that you're getting with the Delhi. You have the scholars already out, might as well start picking up relics, and that's going to give you a nice long-term advantage. Currently he has 2 relics, and he's picking up the 3rd one already. Sacred Site countdown once again started with just 9.5 minutes left to go. Mista is getting ready to launch a counterattack. This will be spotted by Leenock's scouts over here at the beginning, I assume. This is a man-at-arms and a crossbowman, but we can call them scouts because they were just there to scout what the opponent was going for. And there's a keep being built in the middle. It's starting to become a now-or-never situation here for Mista, because if that keep goes up, this is going to be a very difficult position to push. And look at that ridge position for those springolds. That ridge is overlooking the entire valley where Mista's army is situated at, and they can just unleash death and destruction with those springolds. Now, notice that Mista is pulling away all the forces of the opponent by neutralizing the sacred site on the left side. He wants to pull all the forces of the enemy there and then strike at the middle. That would be a very classic Mista move, and I think that's the plan over there. Looks like he's instead converging on the southern location as well. He just wants to sort of isolate that army away from that well-defendable middle position. And at this point, he's successful accomplishing that. On the right side, the sacred side was actually neutralized by a couple of spearmen, and even some villagers were harassed by those spears. As now it looks like Leenock is going to pick up the final relic. That is going to be 4 relics under his control. The 5th one he's not going to be able to grab because that's on the side of Mista. You can see it inside his base. Leenock once again retreating from that sacred site for the time being. But here comes the entire army of Mista, and we're getting closer and closer to a big battle. 69 army, very nice for Mista, 71 for Leenock. But Leenock is playing defensive, and that's the way that he should play this one. He knows very well that while the opponent has a slight villager lead, it's actually 23 villagers, so not even something that should be underestimated. He's got 4 relics. He had 3 sacred sites for a long time, he still has 2. And he's got a very well defendable position in the middle. I would love to see Leenock dropping a castle on the right side sacred site, so that at least he's controlling 2 with keeps consistently, and this way he can focus all his attention on the last remaining sacred site. A couple of men-at-arms will be mismicroed here by Leenock, as we do have a counterattack coming in by Leenock, and this is where we have to mention, as I said, that Leenock's villagers are spread all across the map, which leaves them very exposed to counterattacks by Mista. Mista is grouping up his forces close to this sacred site. Now he has got 3 mangonels, and that's going to be a little risky to fight against for Leenock. Leenock gets 2 men-at-arms into the opponent's base, and you gotta wonder if Mista is going to notice that, because oftentimes when there is so many attack notifications going off, you just don't see that one inside your base, and those men-at-arms could actually get some nice value for themselves. 85 army now for both players. We're getting closer and closer to what could be a decisive battle here. Interesting scenario, because I get the feel that those mangonels are adding so much to the army of Mista here. And without springles, this would be difficult for Leenock to fight against, and it's also going to be difficult if he keeps losing those villagers like that. He has been losing villagers left and right on the berries, and Mista is doing a great job just stretching the attention of the opponent over here. The first Tower Wall Elephant is going to hit the field here. Those beasts will help immensely in the battle, tanking up the damage. Remember, Herbal Medicine is a banned upgrade, which means that you won't be able to use that upgrade to heal your elephants as effectively as it could be possible. And now, those berry villagers are once again exposed, and soon Leenock is gonna have to fight. Here come the Springles, though. He has pulled all of them back, and now he's ready to unleash them on the mangonels. Mangonels of Mista are nowhere to be found, however. It looks like they're lagging behind a tiny bit, and this could be a perfect situation here for Leenock. He could open up against the mangonels. First volley comes out, hits the mangonel, but the mangonels will retreat in an orderly fashion. Archers, men-at-arms are now coming in, and Mista is in full retreat. However, the Springolds army is microed quite heavily, and Mista sees an opportunity. He's going to pull a pincer move, trying to jump on the Springolds. Those Springolds are the weapons that are separating Leenock from getting massacred by the Mangonels. Now 4 Mangonels are setting up. The horsemen are looping around, however, trying to jump on the Mangonels. Mangonels now without spearman defense, as the infantry just trade blows against each other in the middle. Horsemen will finish off one Mangonel, the second one. The third one is also being taken down. In the middle, there is still some archers working. There is some springolds working, some tower war elephants to soak up the damage. All the Mangonels are now gone, and now it's only spearmen left to work with here. For Mista, men-at-arms will soon become extremely effective over here, because those will just slay all those spears. A couple of crossbows are out there, and it looks like we're switching to the player POVs over here. You could see for a brief moment that Leenock is placing farms while taking that fight. This is the micromanagement level we're talking about over here. A Mangonel appearing on the battlefield as well here for Leenock, trying to get some hits out there, just now setting up, and now he's routing the forces of Mista. Once the spearmen were gone to the men-at-arms and once the Mangonels were gone, it was very difficult for Mista to take this fight. And if you look at the army numbers right now, it's 55 for Leenock, 23 for Mista. I really think that the cavalry being able to snipe all of those Mangonels was the deciding factor in there. The Springolds were taken down. That was a great move by Mista, but his Mangonels got killed by the cavalry. They were left unprotected for a brief moment, and once the Mangonels were gone, the men-at-arms were just able to slay the spearmen. For Mista, his win condition in that battle was to keep those Mangonels alive, and now he's in full retreat. Populations are still very close, and Mista's got a great economy, but his army numbers are very concerning. And when you have elephants in your army, you don't even need siege, because the elephants can start taking down buildings themselves. And that's the power here for the Delhi. They can press on to that already existing advantage very easily. And of course, this also allows Leenock to recapture those sacred sites. Elephants are now moving in. I think at this point, Leenock is just probing his opponent, see what he has. A bit of a mismicro over there running into the spears with the elephants, but he should realize that his opponent has minimal forces back at home. And if he wants to strike, now is the time to strike. Looks like we're seeing an increased amount of elephants hitting the battlefield here for Leenock. He is getting some more springolds on the battlefield as well. Now he's moving to the left side. Soon Mista has to move out of his base, because one thing that he doesn't have a ton of left inside his base is wood. As you see, he's sort of chopping down the final trees left in that forest. And I do believe that for a brief moment, our observer was looking at those forests out there, no longer showing them. As I said, you could capture that sacred site at the bottom. In fact, you could do that on the right side as well, because Leenock needs those sacred sites to compensate for his lower villager count. But he has 4 relics, that's a good start, and of course 1 sacred site in the middle, but he needs to constantly maintain control over those sacred sites to maximize his efficiency, and that's exactly what he's doing right now, capping that sacred site. Mista is running low on gold as well, although his army wasn't particularly gold heavy, so it's not a disaster. And look at that. Leenock is really leveraging that map control, sending out villagers, taking those berries. Because the idea is that if I have map control, I need to use that. And those berries are just the soul of the Delhi food economy. Being able to secure that is going to give a very nice food income for the Delhi player. And that's going to be another advantage to use against Mista here. Mista is regrouping, he's back to 45 army, adding some springolds as well against the Mangonels of the opponent. But how do you deal with those elephants now? That's going to be a little tricky. Some of those elephants are heavily damaged, and while the scholars can heal them, as we discussed, herbal medicine has been banned, so the healing rate isn't going to be as spectacular as it would normally be in a ranked game, for example. Now you could ask why herbal medicine was banned. This is something that just came up yesterday in the news, so I'm a little surprised myself. I'm assuming that the players played some practice games in at the venue in Berlin, and we had some issues with herbal medicine being very powerful. So they could just see that, oh yeah, this is something that could potentially be banned. One knight is going to poke around, killing a couple of villagers over here for Mista. Spearmen are back home to deal with that, so not a lot of damage done. And based on the information I have, the herbal medicine is a very powerful upgrade. I've spoken to Salami, who is probably the player that played the most Delhi in the entire world. He's been playing Delhi since release day, and he specifically said that herbal medicine is extremely powerful, and he even showcased that in many cases in some of his games. So, based on his claims and based on the fact that it is banned, we can indeed believe that herbal medicine was so powerful that there was a need for a ban. Anyways, 5 elephants are moving up, supported by quite a lot of men-at-arms. 63 army now for Mista, but there is 98 military population spent for Leenock. Quite a lot of that is in elephants and siege weapons, so that's why you're not seeing that large numbers on the battlefield. But the elephants are crawling up, and this is what I was talking about. You can just use your elephants to take down buildings over here, and look at that, one knight was once again sent over, because as Mista is distracted, he's going to kill the berries. Looks like we're gonna have a sneaky barracks on the right side for Mista, but will he have time to use it? That's the big question, because you have a push coming into his base, and one barracks will do absolutely nothing here for Mista. Looks like the Springolds for Leenock will take down the first Springold from Mista. One elephant falls, as you will have more barracks being placed. So far, Mista isn't too worried. He's letting those barracks be burned down, but one thing that he also could have burned down is his entire farming eco. Look at the left side. He's gonna have to rally his forces on the left because his opponent is breaking into his base. Now, this is risky, because Mista could easily surround his opponent, and there it goes. That's exactly what Mista was planning. He was hoping that his opponent moves into this narrow corridor, because if there's any way to kill those elephants, it is the way to surround them, and that's exactly what we're seeing from Mista. Banganos are unleashing fire on that infantry, but all those elephants are surrounded, and in general, Leenock is just surrounded over here in the middle. He's still taking a reasonable engagement over here, so not the most terrifying situation for him to be in, but you see he's scrambling away with those elephants, realizing that he can't afford to get trapped over here. Now the Man-at-Arms managed to wipe out most of the spearmen, and they're still pushing deeper into the eco of Mista. You can see at the top left, Mista is losing villagers, and the reinforcements are coming in here for Leenock, dropping a keep in this ridge as well. That's going to be a great defensive position. And a problem that Mista is facing is that while he managed to take down so many units from the opponent, his opponent still has double the military. It's 60 army versus 32. Was the best possible fight that Mista could have taken, yet it still was insufficient. He managed to kill most of the elephants, but there are still men-at-arms rampaging his eco. Archer reinforcements are coming in right now for Leenock. And the most important thing, Leenock having that map control. Now, given time, Mista could capitalize on that forward barracks that he managed to sneak out, and he could get some raids going, but he still doesn't have an answer to his opponent having 4 relics, or 2 sacred sites, or just generally a tremendous amount of map control. On the right side, you see the first couple of men-at-arms coming out. There are town centers to protect those villagers with, so it's not the end of the world once again for Leenock. Leenock wasn't really able to kill a ton of villagers from Mista, and Mista's food eco is still operational. You see, it is 1300 food per minute, so despite those men-at-arms hitting the farming eco, it didn't really impact the economy for Mista, and it looks like we're gonna have a lot of villagers being put. Another castle is being placed at the front as the men-at-arms keep raiding the eco of Leenock. Leenock is realizing that, look, I just gotta push up a tiny bit more and use those keeps to secure map control. And as you see, Leenock is still mining stone, so he could potentially think about a third castle. Keep in mind, he doesn't need to destroy a lot of landmarks. It's only the House of Wisdom and the town center that you have to destroy. So you could actually justify adding some trebuchets. It looks like the villagers are fighting back over here against the men-at-arms. That's going to be a difficult effort for them. Men-at-arms having a lot of melee armor. An elephant was also dispatched to deal with that. That one elephant should be enough because it can take down buildings and it can take down men-at-arms as well. Now Leenock, once again, amping up the pressure. On the right side, looks like it's a cleanup, and the 4 villagers are also being taken down. So Mista tried it, but it's not going to materialize that well. Currently 96 villagers versus 106 for Mista. So Mista has slight villager advantage, but he doesn't have the sacred sites, he doesn't have the relics as well. So the overall economy is now in the favor of Leenock. By a significant margin, I would say, as all those forward buildings are now being cleaned up by Leenock. Elephants now knocking on the doors of that first town center. That's actually not the starting town center for Mista. The starting town center is to the north of that. And it looks like in the middle we do have 2 trebuchets being set up by Mista. So he's sort of ignoring his left flank, and he wants to go for a decisive push in the middle. You see, he's dropping a lot of barracks. He just wants to push straight into the base of Leenock. Now this is risky because he's leaving his own base exposed. And as I said, that TC on the left side is not the starting town center. But in the middle, you could soon see those elephants reaching the House of Wisdom or the starting town center. And Mista, while he's gonna be able to take down this keep over here, he's very far from inflicting actual dangerous amount of damage to the economy of Leenock. So I feel like if Leenock just goes for a raid, on the right side, for example, what is this? What is this for Mista? The villagers are moving out towards the middle. Looks like Leenock isn't going to notice that. Leenock didn't notice those villagers, and that could have been an absolute disaster. That could have been potentially a game-losing move here for Mista, losing that many villagers, potentially even showing those wood lines to his opponent, because most of his wood eco is situated on the right side, and that's definitely raidable. And on the left side now you're seeing mangonels and elephants come up. I think this is the moment where Leenock has to go for the town center, and of course, the House of Wisdom. Now he's breaking in on the left side. Mista, however, breaking through the middle, so now Leenock is gonna have to scramble for a bit of a defense over here. Most of the units coming out here are spearmen, so Leenock has to focus on men-at-arms production right now. Production buildings are getting cleaned up, but those are right now insignificant. It's all about those key landmarks, the Tsari Town Center, and of course the House of Wisdom. Defensive keep coming in here for Leenock. He's realizing that he needs to stall this push out a tiny bit. He's pushing on the north with a tremendous amount of units, and I think he's about to find those lumberjacks to the south. Stone walls were made by Mista. Those are banned. Those are banned over here, and that's something that's going to raise some admin questions out there, because those stone walls are definitely slowing down the push of the archers and the men-at-arms. Meanwhile, however, you see the red dots inside the base of Mista. Finally, those men-at-arms and the archers are getting in there. 200 population for Leenock, 185 for Mista. But look at that. Now all the production buildings are gone, and most importantly, one of the town centers are gone. That's not the starting TC, but the second town center is about to get taken down, as well as the House of Wisdom. That's exactly Leenock's win condition. Just go for the landmarks. And right now, Mista doesn't really have the tools to stop his opponent from taking those down. All the attack notifications going off inside the base of Mista. He's lost a significant portion of his farming eco as well. And there you see, there is 3 trebuchets trying to snipe down the siege weapons. 1 mangonel heavily mismicroed over here by Leenock. He's going to unleash some death on those villagers on that gold mine. Leenock is trying to come in from so many directions, and I think if he just focuses efforts into one straight push, that would actually be more beneficial. He's defending back at home quite successfully with the men-at-arms and the mangonels against all those spears out there. But on the left side, his push is stalling out a tiny bit, and you get the feel that Mista is given a window over here to potentially come back into this game, because this push is stalling out a tiny bit. Mangonels now coming in with the volleys. Mista has to pull back all of his spearmen here, because otherwise they would be just slain by the mangonels. Elephants are still getting dangerously close, however. There is a keep that's being shelled by the trebuchets, and there is no clear answer to those trebuchets from Leenock. Mangonels now opening up against all of those spearmen, and that is a ballsy castle. I think that's a castle from Leenock. Yeah, that is. That's a very ballsy castle in the face of the opponent's trebuchets. I'm not even sure if it has any chance of going up, actually. Look at that, so many units coming out here from Mista. He's got some Sprangos to snipe down the mangonels with. The castle is being built, but on the north, now you see the crossbows and the elephants moving in, and the elephants are just so effective killing villagers. Mista is dropping in villager count, and he's not noticing it. Mista is focusing all his attention on this battle over here, and look at that villager count in the top left drop. 68. It was 100 just a couple of minutes ago, because Mista is so focused on this battle on the left side that he didn't notice one single Tower War elephant rampaging his eco. And that's what the elephants can do. They can just march through your eco. They won't shy away from taking down a couple of army units, because they can move, they can shoot while moving, and most importantly, they are very difficult to kill, especially if you're not even looking there. 60 villagers left only for Mista, and with that, I feel like the game is falling into the hands of Leenock over here. Ultimate map control is being translated into a potential victory here. Indeed, Mista taps out, and with that, Leenock has game number 3 as well. The map control, 4 relics, and of course the sacred sites. That is the deciding factor between the two players in this game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Leenock versus Mista. We had a quite lengthy break over here because we also had a restart, I do believe. We had an iteration where Mista had a quite interesting map to start with here, but it looks like this is going to be our live action. So Leenock will spawn on the north with the English in red, and down south you will have Mista playing as the Holy Roman Empire in blue. It is going to be a matchup that's quite intriguing because these are two civilizations that you don't normally associate with King of the Hill that much. The map is King of the Hill. This is the second home map of Mista over here. Now down 1 game against Leenock. Leenock at match point. So looking at the Holy Roman Empire, it is one of the more intriguing choices. for this map, simply because they have a very powerful economy, and this often goes underappreciated on open maps, even. It's not necessarily the most powerful open map civilization, but especially with the Aachen Chapel, you can boost your economy very well, and then if you can secure 2 free relics into the Regnis Cathedral, the combination of that is going to skyrocket your economy, making it very difficult to stop. So it is actually a very intriguing open map civilization. Now, King of the Hill is not necessarily something that you would normally consider a super open map, but it's definitely more open than, let's say, Hillandale, the place where you would normally see the Holy Roman Empire. So I'm curious to see what Mista has on his mind with his Holy Roman Empire over here. He's got 4 villagers on the gold, which is a sign that he's mostly boosting his sheep villagers with the prelate. If you have a prelate boosting your gold miners, you need like 2 or at maximum 3. If you have 4, it means that you are boosting your sheep gatherers, because you need to gather gold fast with 4 villagers, because you will have a good food eco for feudal age. So depending on how you distribute your prelate between your sheep villagers and your gold villagers, you also have to adjust the amount of villagers on each of those resources. If you're focusing your prelate on your sheep, then you want to have more than the normal 3 villagers on gold, likely 4. If you're focusing on gold, then you're likely going to just have 2 villagers out there and more villagers ready to food. So that's an extra level of consideration for the Dark Age of the Holy Roman Empire. Now up north, you're going to have the Council Hall being dropped by Leenock. He's building that with 3 villagers, if I can see it correctly. And down south, I would think it's going to be the Aachen Chapel coming in. For Mista, indeed it is. It is going to be an Aachen Chapel that's going to affect the villagers underneath the town center. It's going to affect the berry villagers, and it's also going to affect the gold miners. Probably the most effective Aachen Chapel that you can possibly drop over here. Mill is going to be dropped over here right now by Mista, and since he's still mining a bit of a gold, you gotta consider the possibility of professional scouts here for the Holy Roman Empire. Keep in mind that professional scouts combined with the Aachen Chapel would give an absolutely brutal and almost ludicrous level of food eco for the Holy Roman Empire. So that's something that you can always consider, although he's a little low on gold villagers to be able to immediately pop that, but it's always an option for him. For now, he's boosting his lumberjacks, however, which means that he wants to drop a production building right at the beginning. Potentially even 2 production buildings. Could be double stable horseman play from him, could be stable archer range, stable barracks. So we'll see what his plan is. Against the English, you probably want to open with horsemen because you expect the longbows to arrive at your base. And since there is also a barracks coming out from the English player for spears, you probably want to open with stable and range. For now, for Mista, we're not seeing a single production building. The amount of villagers on the woodline will be scouted by Leenock, so he probably knows that his opponent is going to have quite a lot of commitment to lumberjacking, and that means that he's going to play with at least 2 production buildings over here. That's what I would expect from him. Mista, pretty low on gold, so professional scouts is not going to be part of the equation anymore. And let's see what the production buildings he goes for. There is going to be double archer ranges. Interesting choice, but it could work out very well, especially because Leenock is preemptively going for the spearmen. He was expecting horsemen to arrive, so if you go for double ranges and play defensive, you can hold off the English quite well, because the English longbows move rather slow, so it's going to take a lot of time for Leenock to get to the opponent's base, which means that despite the fact that Leenock is going to have the slightly faster production with the Council Hall, the numbers around the base of Mista will always be better for him. Leenock has a scout looking at the base of Mista from the right side, so he's overlooking this area, seeing what his opponent is up to in terms of production building. And look at that, Mista is doing the same trick again. He was tempted to stop them, and as long as he stops the building of the building and cancels it, if the building took no damage, you will get all the wood back. So the idea was that he was sort of constructing them to like 95%. So in case he sees the archers coming in, and he indeed wants to respawn with his own archers, then he can just finish those. But if he sees something different, he's going to stop making these and cancel the building, getting a full refund. So it's actually a very clever move from Mista, not the first time that we're seeing it from him. And this is not a thing that I've seen before from anyone, so this might be a brand new idea from Mista, one of his secret/hidden strategies for this tournament, something that I expect all the players to potentially steal probably even the second series is going to have some of that being utilized. And look at that. The Prelate is being pulled to try and heal the archers. What a micro here by Mista. He's using the Prelate to try and heal his archers, but the numbers are slightly better right now for Leenock. And Leenock is dropping a tower in front of Mista's base. This is where things are getting a little concerning for Mista, because his lumberjacks are very heavily exposed. And if those lumberjacks are pushed by the longbows, how is he going to make archers? This is the problem. The longbows are opening up against those villagers. One villager goes down already. And you gotta wonder, how is Mista going to be able to access any kind of wood? If you look at the forests around his base, those are terrible. And all this feudal age aggression could materialize in a lot of damage done, simply because Mista won't be able to field a lot of army. He won't have the resources for it. He currently has 22 wood in the bank. Looks like he's going to try and potentially wall off this side to prevent the longbows from pushing in. But Leenock is aware of that. Leenock is fully aware that that's the second wood line, that his opponent has to take. Villagers are being pulled to make those walls happen, but the longbows open up against them. The scout is also going to block the foundations, and that is going to be enough for Leenock to keep this side open. Volley comes out from the longbows, damages the villager quite heavily. Archers are now moving in, but you got the network of castles bonus here, affecting Leenock, and Leenock is also dropping a tower on that hilltop. That's going to help so much for those longbows. Villagers once again being pulled to try and make the walls happen. Looks like they will survive the initial volleys of the longbows. One villager goes down, a second one is gonna get taken down, but the walls are at least complete. Third villager gets taken down, however, from Mista, and now he's down to 23 as opposed to 28 from his opponent. So many villagers lost their lives over here, and I feel like Leenock has already gotten a ton of return value for those archers that he has made. Looks like Mista is tempted to launch a counterattack here, as the villagers of Mista will move towards that wood line. I wonder if he is actually running out of food inside his base. We haven't seen his food situation for a long time, but nope. He's just moving to an even stronger lumberjacking position, and look at that, another tower being dropped by Leenock. He wants to amp up the pressure on those wood lines. He's realizing that the starting wood and the starting forests on this map are quite limited, and this is something that you can exploit very effectively with the English. For now, he's regrouping with his longbows, but the ultimate move from him would be to add horsemen here. Just one or two horsemen would soak up so much arrow fire from those archers, and he saw the double archer ranges from Mista. He knows very well that there is no spearman to be afraid of. So a couple of horsemen here for Leenock could be immensely helpful. Now, Mista is banking up a ton of resources, and you gotta respect that. Now there's a barracks, now there is a stable, and despite the fact that he's down 6 villagers, you have to keep in mind that the Aachen Chapel is still operational. So the economy for Mista is still rather reasonable. Looks like a mining camp is being dropped by Leenock in the middle to mine stone. I assume he wants arrow slits on those towers, potentially even fortifications. It would be very surprising if that stone mining operation was for a second town center. This is probably just to reinforce those towers for the time being. And as those villagers are cutting closer and closer to that tower, the longbows will soon have a window to start shooting at them. Now, an ultimate move here would be to make a stone wall and place the longbows on top to gain extra range, but stone walls are banned in the tournament, so you are not eligible to do that. If this was a ranked game, that's what you should do though. Make a stone wall, place your longbows on top, because that way they gain extra range and they can hit the villagers out there. You see that the Prelate is healing up the damaged villagers, but the villagers are getting dangerously close to those longbows. Meanwhile, looks like Mista is not going into Castle Age. Instead, he's focusing on more military production over here. He has spent his food and wood on more archers. He's got a blacksmith going as well. And let's see what Leenock is thinking. Now, it would take quite a lot of time to break through these walls over here, so Leenock isn't bothering at all. And it looks like the archers are moving up on the left side here for Mista, so bit of a trench warfare right now for both of these players. Really unsure what exactly to do, but this actually gives a window for Mista, who is getting quite a lot of horsemen out, and one thing that Leenock doesn't have is actual vision on those production buildings. One of his scouts is up here, close to that wall. The other one is to the southern part of the map, so I doubt that Leenock has seen those stables. Now, he's going to open up against those villagers with longbows, takes down another villager, and that's the extra range of the longbows that he's really leveraging over here. 7 villagers lead now for him. There's a Prelate boosting those lumberjacks, so once again, lower villager count doesn't necessarily mean a much weaker eco for Mista. And now you're seeing some spears, now you're seeing some horsemen arriving on the battlefield as well for Leenock. Little too late to the party because now his opponent also has spears and horsemen potentially. But this will just mean that the fights will be rather even. There is a defensive tower now with the arrow slits upgrade. Horsemen are ready to jump on those stone miners. The stone miners are gone. Longbows staying inside the influence radius of that tower, unleashing death and destruction on those archers. And now you gotta be careful because there are spears on the battlefield. If you're Mista, you have to focus down those spears, but you don't have a direct answer to the horsemen, and that's your problem. You don't have a single spearman yourself. So you have to deal with those horsemen using your own horsemen and potentially the archers, but this gives a great window for Leenock. His longbows once again affected by the network of castles bonus, and you see he's focusing down the archers. He's realizing that the best way to deal with the cavalry will be with spears, and he just wants to minimize the amount of archers that will be on the battlefield that can potentially kill his spears. He could have focused the fire on the horsemen, just trying to kill the horsemen with his longbows, but instead he's focusing the archers because those are rather easy to kill with his longbows. And then that opens up the possibility of adding more spears over here. Mista will be forced away from that wood line once again, I do believe, because now the longbows should be able to reach the villagers. Nope, instead, looks like Mista is going heavily on the food department, placing a mill right now. There is a scout at the back that's still harassing the villagers of Mista, and you see for a brief moment that Leenock is switching into farming eco. It's going to be a quite significant investment at the beginning, but that's going to skyrocket his food eco very soon. We have seen that for the English in the Altai game. And it looks like Mista is going to split his villagers in between the hunt and the woodland on the left side. His eco is still safe and he's floating a ton of gold right now, but he's very low on the food. So Castle Age is still just a distant dream right now for him. Whereas for Leenock, he's also super far away from Castle Age right now. However, you can see that Leenock has wheelbarrow and Leenock has the lumberjack upgrade as well, just now going for horticulture. So in terms of economy, now Leenock is ahead. 6 villagers plus quite a lot of technologies in his favor. The English farming, despite the fact that Mista has the HRE with the Chapel, I think that now Leenock has the advantage in terms of eco. Now the longbows are marching up and you're getting to that critical mass that can just one-shot the horsemen. That's your aim when you're playing the English and you're going so heavy in feudal age combat. You want to have a critical mass of those longbows that can just kill a horseman in one volley, because from that point on, it's difficult for a horseman to engage. Ranged defense upgrade is there for Mista. Ranged attack upgrade there for Leenock, so both of the players do have the critical blacksmith upgrades that's relevant for this fight. And up north, looks like we're gonna have some more farming added. You see, Leenock isn't even touching his hunts. He's realizing that the English farming is what he has to build his eco around. That scout at the bottom is still killing villagers, by the way. Now horsemen are being sent. I wonder if that scout actually killed any villagers or just was annoying. But it definitely seemed like there were some low HP villagers out there, so you gotta wonder if 1 or 2 villagers fell to that. 11 villagers lead right now, however, because the horsemen went back, and this opens up a possibility of Leenock to push deep in here. Castle Age is on the way. For our blue player, I do believe Mista, he balanced out his eco, but this is going to be the hardest to survive right now. You just invested all your resources into Castle Age, this is the time to strike for Leenock. He knows very well that the moment Mista gets to Castle Age, you're going to see knights appear on the battlefield, knights that Leenock doesn't have a direct answer to. Indeed, the Regnitz Cathedral is being built as we speak. Resources are still accessible right now for Mista. He's got the food, he's got the gold, so he will be able to make some knights happen. Now the food eco is going to skyrocket very soon with those farms for Leenock, but he needs to push this one right now, before his opponent gets to Castle Age here. Longbows are now marching up, still playing this one patiently, holding the hilltop spearmen, trying to jump on those horsemen. Not a lot of spears right now mixed in here for Leenock. And you see, Mista is playing very defensive here, making just enough army to hold this off for the time being. Longbows trying to isolate those villagers from the army now, and you gotta wonder if this was the right decision to make here for Mista, because if that army ever gets to hit those villagers on the left side, this is gonna be a disaster for Mista. Volleys now come out from Longbows, starting to pick apart those low HP horsemen, and you could also see the palings being dropped, which means that now the cavalry had a tough time charging. Prelates are being sent out to pick up the relics, but guess what? All those villagers are now stranded, and there is enough horsemen and spears potentially to burn down that tower. All the villagers are getting absolutely massacred, and the Regnitz Cathedral is effective, the Aachen Chapel is effective, but it's not going to compensate for such a huge villager deficit. Look at that, the tower is going to get taken down, that's 4 more villagers down the drain, and there are some more villagers that are actually stranded on the left side. You want to make knights over here if you are Mista, but how many knights can you afford when so many villagers were picked off? 1 or 2 knights won't change the outcome of this battle. You see, it's going to absorb a lot of arrow fire, but a few spears will deal with it. And if you look at Leenock's resources, he's getting close to Castle Age. And the Horsemen, I think they know about the extra villagers on the left side. That's going to be another 5 villagers being taken down from Mista. He's gonna be dropped to 20, and that is just unbelievable. I don't think Mista's gonna be able to recover from losing that many villagers out there. And with that, 5 villagers will be dropped on the left side. And once again, I say that the headset was taken off a little too early here on the face cam of Mista. I think we have a bit of a desync between the cameras and the actual gameplay. Mista gets taken down by the English of his opponent here. And with that, oops, my scoreboard is not actually active over here. But with that, Leenock takes the set 3-1. Spectacular performance from Leenock over here. Bit of a quick summary for this set. This was my first time casting with the clean feed that was provided during the N4C main event here. So I hope that the sound was alright. If not, please let me know, because the only way I can adjust is by hearing your feedback. We were given a very low or very small window to test things out. In fact, I had like 20 minutes at maximum to test things out here. So the best I could do is what you could see out there. Also, I'm not the one controlling the camera, so some of the things are not necessarily things that we will see, despite the fact that they might be relevant to what I say. But anyways, Leenock showing some strength over here. Quick summary to the set over here. We had Arabia being won by Mista, but that was also a rather close game. After that, however, 3 games in a row for Leenock. He's one of the candidates, one of the sneaky candidates to win this entire tournament, I believe. And he has shown, especially after losing game number 1, why he's one of the most dangerous players out there. He's very considerate of the fight that he's taking. He's very fast and very smart, and he took down one of the best players in Age of Empires 4. But no worries, Mista fans. Mista is not out yet, but he's going to lose his first set over here in the Swiss stage, which means that he's falling lower on the bracket, whereas whereas Leenock is going upwards. Also, please let me know how you feel about, just game after game after game, if you actually want to have some more in-between games discussion out here. I'm trying to sort of maximize efficiency and make sure that we don't have 20-30 minute breaks in between games, because sometimes we do have that. That's one of the drawbacks of a LAN stage in many ways. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. This was Mista versus Leenock. I'll be covering the entire N4C main event off-site, which means that I'm sitting right now back at home. The event is being played right now in Berlin. 8 of the best players in the world fighting for a $100,000 prize pool. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and see you next time.